Hey guys, in this video I will be showing you how I made this Shabby Chic inspired tumbler. The tumbler I'm using is a 24-ounce Plump from the Tipsy Magnolia, and this vinyl is from PDB Creative Studio. I will of course have all the items that I'm using down below in the description, along with some discount codes for you. Since my tumbler is prepped and ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and take my vinyl and eyeball measure how big I want this wrap to be. So I just wrap it around and try to get it as straight as possible. And then I'm going to take my scissors and make a little nip in the vinyl where I want to cut it with my paper cutter. The paper cutter is a lifesaver for me because I cannot cut things straight to save my life. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert that in there and then slide it to cut it. Easy peasy. To apply my vinyl, I like to use the hinge method. I peel back a little bit of the vinyl and then I cut a thin strip off of the backing. And then I'm going to go ahead and flip it back over and put this backing back on the vinyl. This is so I can line it up on the tumbler without it sticking to it right away. I'm going to go ahead and line the vinyl back up and then remove that little piece off there that I cut and press down that sticky spot. And then I'm going to use my fingers and get this started. Once you start pressing down, the backing will come off by itself. So I'll just use my squeegee and I press as I go forward. And as you can see, that backing just slides right off. I like to give it a once over just to make sure there's no wrinkles or bubbles. If there's any of that, I take care of it at this time. I decided I wanted to add a little glitter to the top and bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and use this edging tool I got from Amazon to cut off some vinyl towards the top of the tumbler. Now I'm going to go ahead and tape off the vinyl so I don't get any of my adhesive on there or glitter. And I'm going to do this for the top and the bottom. For the bottom edge, I'm trying to leave the same size gap as I did at the top of the tumbler. So I'm just gonna eyeball that as well. Just trying to make sure to get it as straight as possible. I am looking at the vinyl edge to use as a guide to make it straight. Just like I did on the top, I'm going to go ahead and tape off the vinyl so I don't get adhesive or glitter on it. To apply my glitter, I'll be using my Adhesive Apothecary Thick Glitter Glue. And I'm just going to give it a little shake, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add it in between those tape lines and use a brush and just spread it around evenly. Once the glue is on, I'll be going in with Salted Caramel from PDB Creative Studio. When you're finished glittering, you'll want to pull that tape right away while the glue is still wet. Once the tape is pulled, we're going to go ahead and set this aside and let it dry for about 15 minutes or so. When it's dry, I'll be sealing it with my binding potion from Adhesive Apothecary. And I'm just going to do like I did with the glue and go around the bottom and top edges that I glittered with a brush. When I'm done applying my binding potion, I'm going to go ahead and clean up that edge just to make sure that I didn't get any excess anywhere and didn't have any stray glitter pieces move on me. And I'm going to do the same exact steps for the top rim. Just like the glue, once we're done, we're going to go ahead and set this aside and let it dry completely before we move on to our first layer of epoxy. I put on my epoxy and I went ahead and torched it, and now I'm going to add some glitter to this. I'm using Diadem from PDB Creative Studio. I'm just going to sprinkle a little in my hand and then pinch the glitter with my fingers and apply wherever I want to add a little sparkle. My tripod decides to kind of fall over here. I'm sorry, so I'm not centered, but at least you can still see what I'm doing. When you're done adding your glitter, just go ahead and let this cure. Now that my epoxy is cured, I'm going to go in with my Adhesive Apothecary Celestial Luster. This is in the color Iris. I'm so sorry, but as you'll see in a minute, you won't be able to see what this looks like on the tumbler. For some reason, my camera just does not pick this up. But what it's doing is it's adding a really pretty pink sparkle to this tumbler. The glitter in it is super fine, and it just adds a really nice shimmer. Definitely grab yourself a bottle if you haven't tried it. I promise you it's worth it, and it's super pretty. But once I get this all on, I'm going to go ahead and let this dry for about 20 minutes before adding another layer of epoxy. I went in with my epoxy and it is nice and cured, so I'm going to go in with my alcohol inks. These are Espresso, Religion, and Oasis, all from PDB Creative Studio. You will also need some 91% alcohol. I'm going to start off using Espresso on the seam here. I'm going to try my best to hide this with this darker color. And how I do this is I add a little tiny drop onto my tumbler, and using my brush, I kind of tap it around, and then I tap off any excess on my paper towel. Off camera, I do have a little medicine cup full of alcohol, and I dip my brush into that, and then I use the brush to kind of feather out those areas so that way it's not so harsh. I'm going to continue this process with the espresso all around the tumbler wherever I feel like I need to darken it up. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to go in with my Oasis just to add a little color to the tumbler. I use the same process as I do with the espresso. And just as a side note, if you put it over the espresso, it's going to turn a little bit of a green color. So I did try to put it in areas where I didn't put the espresso. Last but not least is Religion, which is a metallic gold alcohol ink. Feel free to go back in with any of the colors and just add to it. Just play with it until your heart's content. When you're satisfied with your inks, you're going to go ahead and let them dry completely before moving on to the next step. Mine are dry, and so I'm going to go ahead and add this decal. I did not add any epoxy after the alcohol inks. I'm just going straight in with my decal. This decal I made on Cricut Design Space. It's just the typewriter font, and I offsetted it and layered it off a camera. You do want to make sure your inks are completely dry before this step because your transfer tape can pick up the pigment. I did have a little bit of transfer with the Religion, but it was just a teeny tiny bit, so it didn't bother me too much. It actually kind of worked in this case because this tumbler is like a vintage Shabby Chic, so it's not perfect by any means. Once my decal is on, I'm going to go ahead and add my pinstriping. If you got ink onto your glittered areas, just use a sanding block and buff away the ink. It takes like 2 seconds, it's pretty easy. And then I'm just going to go in with this Tech Wrap Craft textured gold vinyl, and I'll have the dimensions for the decal and the pinstriping down below in the description. But I'm going to go ahead and go around all the edges of the gold, both top and bottom. When you're done with your pinstriping, it'll be time to finish off your tumbler with your last few layers of epoxy. For the butt of this tumbler, I forgot to hit record, but I used the Salted Caramel and Under the Sea from PDB Creative Studio. I just put a little bit of epoxy into the cups and then poured it into the little sections on the bottom. I also went in with Diadem again and sprinkled that on top of the area where I put Under the Sea. Make sure to torch any bubbles and let cure, and by then your tumbler will be finished. Here is how it turned out. I absolutely love this tumbler. I hope you love it as well, and I hope you liked my tutorial. If you did, please consider giving me a follow and a like. I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you did make this tumbler and post it on social media, give me a tag at InRouse Designs. I'd love to see your creations. Okay, bye.